Well, hey there. Welcome to the backyard. I'm Greg, and today in the backyard we are talking about the English warbow. Check it out. The English warbow. As the name implies, it is a bow made for war. It looks like it's made from two pieces of wood. It is in fact a single piece of yew. Italian yew was the wood of choice, and so you have the inner heartwood, the darker colored inner heartwood, which was very stiff and resists flexing, and then you have the outer sapwood, which is a little more flexible. And so when it's carved with both of those bits of wood together, they work perfectly in tandem. This particular warbow has a draw weight of 90 pounds. So that means when you come to full draw, which is actually closer to 32 inches at full draw, you're holding 90 pounds. Now for a warbow, this is actually considered kind of lightweight. An average warbow was somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 pounds of draw weight, and the English would go to war with their bow. And so in battles like Agincourt during the 100 Years' War, the warbow came into play and literally changed the course of history. It was a very powerful weapon, and there's a lot of debate whether the arrows from a warbow could puncture armor. Now, if it was chainmail armor, a bodkin point, which we'll look at in just a minute, would plow right through chainmail with no problem. Plate armor, you weren't really going to get a lot of penetration. But if you have knights in plate armor riding on horses with literally hundreds upon hundreds of arrows from 150-pound warbows raining down on them, you were going to get knocked off your horse. And then you would either be trampled by your friends' horses, or when the infantry came in, when the foot soldiers came in with their swords, they would finish you off. The warbow was a pretty brutal weapon. So it's a little windy out here. We're going to see if we can get a couple of shots so you can see what an English warbow looks like in action. So the English warbow, you had what was called a bodkin point. This is sort of the armor-piercing round, and the arrows are a ½ inch in diameter. They're sort of the 50 cal of the archery world. And on the bow, modern bows, you have a shelf here that the arrow rests on. There is no shelf because it's just a single piece of wood, and so the arrow rests on your knuckle. You're shooting off the knuckle. So I wear a glove, a nice leather glove, so that I don't end up with fletchings embedded in my hand. And so you simply knock your arrow, come to full draw, and you let it go. There's no holding this thing. You come to full draw, you let it go, because at 90 pounds, you're going to go quick. Now, with modern archery, you tend to have your feet shoulder width apart. Your feet are parallel to your target. With the warbow, you can't just pull it with your arms. At 90 pounds, if you're just using your arms to pull, you get really, really tired. And so what you do, you put your leading foot actually facing, and you're leaning in, and so that when you draw, you're pulling the bow string back, but you're pushing the bow forward, and you're actually engaging your back muscles. You can't just pull with your arms. There's no way that you could shoot for any length of time with just your arms. And so you're actually engaging your back muscles, your shoulder and your back, and you're pulling it around that way. And at 90 pounds, that arrow zips pretty quick. At 90 pounds, you did not want to be on the pointy end, the receiving end of those arrows. So what does all that mean? Let's go to the workbench. So my heritage is British. My mom was born in a town called Leicester, which is north of London. She lived in England until she was about 14. She spent her summers in Ireland with her grandparents. And so my my heritage, my history, my heart lies with England. I was never a huge fan of history until I started researching a little bit about my heritage. And as I started reading about the Hundred Years' War, this was a literal war that lasted 100 years between England and France. And I look at battles like Crécy and Agincourt, where the English longbow, some will say, literally changed the course of history. And so the idea that someone in my history, someone in my family tree, was on that battlefield in Agincourt in 1415 as an archer, it just fascinates me. For me today, as someone who loves archery, that idea that I might have this connection with someone who was on that battlefield is encouraging. It's inspiring. It's fascinating to me. And I think that's a little bit of what Paul was talking about in Hebrews chapter 12. In Hebrews chapter 11, Paul gives this long list of sort of heroes of the faith, people who had gone before us, people who put their faith in God, and how we can be inspired by them. And so he gives this sort of hall of fame in Hebrews 11. And in Hebrews chapter 12, he says, therefore. Right? Whenever you see the word therefore, you should stop and ask, what is it there for? The word therefore has usually come after some significant statement of truth. And so because that is true, therefore, this is true also. And so Paul says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. As we look back on those who have gone before us, as we look back on people we know who were faithful followers of Jesus, to know that we are connected with them, that we can do the same. Therefore, since we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that entangles. Let us run with perseverance that race marked out before us, just as they did. Consider him who endured such opposition, so that you will not grow weary. Because of all of those who have gone before us, we can do the same. Because someday someone will look back at us and consider how we ran our race. And the hope is that they also will not grow weary. You work on that. Until I see you next time, you keep aiming for whatever it is that God has called you to do and to be.